The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of Talk Radio AM 640.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640.
I'm the Spaceman, and this is AVFS. I'd like to welcome you in. If you're driving around town right now listening to AM 640, I welcome you in. Or maybe if you're at work right now listening via the AM 640 app, picking up the signal that way, I welcome you in too. Or if you're listening to me right now in your Shaw Direct Channel 865 location, welcome you in there too. Or if you're listening to me on your 3 or 4G personal communication device via the Stream the World software, now available also free on Apple Music, or the Radio Player Canada app, I welcome you in. Or maybe what some call the best seat in the house, sitting in front of your Mac, your PC at home, logged on to 640toronto.com, picking up the live audio streaming there. I welcome you in. Wherever you are in the world, I welcome you in. Get ready. Here it comes again. The Illumanati have yet another King Arthur movie for you to peruse. Yeah! Opens this weekend. It's being shown in 50 countries around the world, opening at around the same date and time. Including Russia and China, by the way, are seeing King Arthur, The Legend of the Sword. The U.S. and Canadian release date, May 12th, 2017, this weekend. Let me get to the numerology involved there, first of all. The release date, numerology, May 12th, 2017. What do you think it would be? In numerology, it breaks down to a 666. See, May, the 5th month, plus 1, plus 2, the 12 for the date. And 2017, 2017 for the year, it forms an 18, a hidden 666, the number of the beast described in the King James Version of the Bible in Revelation, which the elite are going to follow to the letter to bring in their New World Order. In Revelation 12, you'll see the devil, the dragon, got two allies. The beast out of the sea is one. The beast out of the earth, the other. The first beast is straight out of the book of Daniel. The lion, leopard, bear symbolism entwined there. Cruel, strong, fierce. The second is from Job 41, the great behemoth. The dragon and the two beasts are an unholy trinity, which is a parody of the Christian Holy Trinity. The first beast is a parody of the Christ. He almost dies. Some people thought he was dead, and comes back to life, as Christ did after coming down off the cross. Some people thought this might even be a parody, or not a parody, but the actual Roman Emperor Nero himself, who died in 68 AD, 68 years after Jesus Christ, but was widely rumored to be coming back as a resurrected conqueror. The second is a parody of the Holy Spirit, whose work is to get people to worship the first beast. Now, this beast out of the earth was able to perform miracles and to recruit people to worship and serve the beast out of the sea. This is why, by the way, I call the bloodline from which this Antichrist will come the Water Kings, because they conquered by water ships. They sailed to foreign ports, foreign lands, and conquered it. And in a grotesque way, this is all a parody of baptism they all had to receive. It was the mark of the beast, or they would suffer economic persecution and social ostracism. In ancient times, under Roman rules even, often if you had sacrificed to the Caesar, you actually received a certificate to say you had done so. A commemorative letter, or even a diploma, if you like, was handed out to make you feel special. Hollywood, the center of spellcasting and brainwashing, programming center of the elite system of indoctrination. Hollywood. This movie, Making Capital of the World, was even named Hollywood for a really good reason. You know what it is? Hollywood is the special, powerful wood of choice for all of the ancient druid wizards to make their magic wands out of, to cast spells. And nothing's changed today. Hollywood still casting spells by today's wizards, having their wands, creating the magic in where? Hollywood, with their new technology, glittering, sparkling, moving, talking. Now, counting only one genre of getting this message to you, video, not print included here at all, just video. In all, up to this weekend's release of King Arthur, The Legend of the Spirit, there have been, how many movies do you think of King Arthur? 120 have been made that have been done on this subject alone. Now, since the latest release this weekend, The Legend of the Sword, there are now 121 flicks out in one form or another on this subject of King Arthur alone. Notice something here in the number? The number 121 for The Legend of the Sword, the 121st movie made of King Arthur the Legend. It's a palindrome. Again with the palindrome. Also, last week, if you were listening, I revealed a very, very, very important date with a palindrome included. Palindromes are the same backwards as they are forwards. And that's what this movie is meant to do. The Illumanati love them because they have magical power. The witching world believes palindromes have inherent power because they reflect the physical world and the spiritual world as like a mirror. This is Spaceman Talk Radio, AM 640. Tonight, King Arthur. And more. The Legend of the Spirit on AM 640. And I'm just getting started. I got to call the Spaceman Talk Radio, AM 640. Tonight, King Arthur, The Legend of the Sword flick is out. Released in 50 countries to get the message out, the predictive programming. Predictive programming? Because if this flick, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, is your entertainment of choice this weekend, that's what you're going to be exposing yourself to. Predictive programming. And you'll pay for it in more ways than one. Can you imagine the power here? Unless you know what you're walking into? Because that's what the advantage is of a movie director. A movie director has the advantage of no one having any idea of what they're going to be exposed to, and just sit back and go, okay, let it happen. So, you could be in for some very, very, very skillfully, psychologically driven intentions. If you get my meaning. The power to program, basically, simply put, brainwashing. Brainwash someone in a flick theater, and they'll even pay for it. People will actually pay to be brainwashed. Well, let's see what this one's about. Sit down and let it happen. All unaware and unbeknownst to them what's going to happen. Now, that's what I call witching power to control. Predictive programming. In the science / black magic of social engineering, that title that they have for this art is known as predictive programming. You've heard of it. I've talked about it before. Predictive programming is a subtle form of psychological conditioning provided by the media to acquaint the public with planned societal changes to be implemented by our leaders. If and when these changes are put through, the public will already be familiarized with them, you see, and will accept them more easily as a natural progression. As one researcher called it, lessening any possible public resistance or commotion. Magical. Hollywood is the magician's wand. Holy, which can be used as to cast a spell on the unsuspecting person. Someone who's unarmed, not able to defend themselves when it comes to certain, postulating an idea, taking you down an historical trail that's been twisted. Things or ideas which would otherwise be seen as bizarre, vulgar, even undesirable, or absolutely downright impossible, are inserted into films in the realm of fantasy. When the viewer watches these flicks, his or her mind is left open to suggestion, and the conditioning process begins. And there are ways to get people into very docile positions with color, speed of the frames that go by. These same movies, which are designated to program the average person, can give the discerning viewer a better understanding of the workings and the planning of the world agenda if you are a discerning viewer. If you are, be aware. Predictive programming, the power of suggestion, using the media of fiction to create a desired outcome. Now, this movie, King Arthur, with the message of a savior coming to be king for all, because that's the message in every single King Arthur story, whether it's in video or print. This flick was originally set for July 22, 2016, a release date then, last year. But on December 21st, 2015, Warner Brothers moved the date to February 17th of this year, 2017. Then, come January 21st, 2016, Warner Brothers did it again. Announced again it would be pushed back to March 24th March 24, 2017 this time. Then the title was changed to King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. That was in July of just last year. Then, December 2016, the release was pushed back yet again from its March 24th slot to the one it has now this past Friday, yesterday, May 12th, 2017. Why? Why all of that? Even the changing of the title. All this moving of the release dates, you might wonder why. Well, it's called exposure. Extra chatter, extra talks stimulated when this happens. More attention grabbing. More eyeballs to see it. It's been promoted, really, since 2015. 2 years. You tell me any other flicks that have been, and this is not a really blockbuster. It's probably not even going to be number one in the box office this year or this weekend. But it's got more promotion than any of the others. Star Wars, Star Trek style promotion. Because the more eyeballs that see it, more ears that will hear of it, more programming. And get this, there's more chatter created for this flick aimed at the youth crowd, too, who are the real target because they are the ones that will be living in this soon-to-come New World Order. This Camelot, if you like. The original trailer for this movie, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, was released July 23, 2016. Yeah, the trailer's been running since 2016. Almost for a year now. During this 2016 run with the trailer, San Diego Comic-Con had it and was attached to screenings of Mechanic, Resurrection, Don't Breathe, another one, Shut In, and Fantasy Beasts also, and Where to Find Them. It was originally planned for an IMAX release, as evident in the Comic-Con trailer, but was canceled due to it being postponed and would only receive non-IMAX presentations. Now, the first extended television commercial was released in January 22nd of 2017, this year, and was shown on the 2017 NFC National Football League Championship game on Fox Broadcasting Company between the Atlanta Falcons and the Green Bay Packers. How about that for eyeball exposure? And the 2017, it was shown then too, at the 2017 AFC Championship NFL game on CBS between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New England Patriots, who went on to win that year, this year, 2017, or this past Super Bowl. A second trailer, more promotion, was released again February 20th, 2017, was attached to Logan, Kong, Skull Island, Power Rangers, and Ghost in the Shell. And that's not all. The promotion is not finished yet. The third and final trailer for this flick, released this weekend in 50 countries, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, was released April 1st of this year and was attached to the Fate of the Furious, The Lost City of Zed, which also starred Hunam, who stars in this flick too of King Arthur, and also Free Fire. The film was even shown at select AMC theaters in a special preview back on April 27th of this year in a promotional event to create buzz. You need buzz for all of that promotion? Yeah. All they can get, all they can take, they will take. It was titled King for a Day. That's right, King for a Day. They even state the demand for tickets led AMC theaters to expand the event to 200 theaters. There were so many people clamoring to see this flick. Not really, but great promotion. They really are pushing the idea, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, hard. It's supposedly a 2017 fantasy film, loosely based on Arthurian legends. Well, isn't everyone? It's directed by Guy Ritchie, of course, the British movie actor. Remember, he was the guy who was married to the pop star Madonna, as everyone knows, until her divorce in 2008. Madonna, superstar. Madonna is known as a culture buster. And what culture buster is to the elites? That's someone that you can send as a performer into another country and change their culture by getting to the young who don't want their old culture any longer and want the new, want to dress like their new pop star idol. Madonna did that, especially in Japan. Japan, in those times when Madonna was just getting started, all were destined to live the old Japanese style of life, their way of life, their old traditional customs. When Madonna came along, they all wanted to wear Madonna clothes, look like her, and act like her. So irreverent is that super pop star, Culture Busters. Guy Ritchie, married to her. Reason why. I'll get to that next on Talk Radio AM 640. It's the Spaceman. This is AVFS. More next. Communicate by email, space@640toronto.com. One of the addresses, spaceman@640toronto.com. The other one, and thank you for the ones that you've sent. I'm on about King Arthur, The Legend of the Sword, opening in 50 countries. This weekend it opens up in North America, and there's been just a deluge of promotion that has gone behind it. Mostly online and in some theaters and on television and some very, very, very heavily watched shows, as I already alluded to earlier in the last segment. Now, it's directed by, who would have thunk it, a Brit, Guy Ritchie, the British movie director. He was, as I said before the break, married to pop star Madonna, the culture buster, until her divorce in 2008. They had a couple of kids together. Now, the terms of the marriage annulment gave Guy Ritchie about $76 million when they split up, which includes the couple's London pub that they own, and a residence, and a Wiltshire estate also included in that in England. Oh, they're very rich, very elite rich, Guy Ritchie and Madonna, to each independently wealthy. Oh yes, these two household names, Guy Ritchie and Madonna, are the elite. Just how elite? Give you an idea. The rich only marry the rich. Remember, Guy Ritchie is the second of two kids of Amber and Captain John Vivian Ritchie, who was born in 1928. He was a former Seaforth Highlander serviceman and advertising executive after he de-enlisted. Guy Ritchie's dad's mother was Doris Margaretta McLaughlin. Born in 1896, she was the daughter of Vivian Guy McLaughlin and Edith Martineau. Vivian Guy McLaughlin shares close common ancestors with Prince William's wife, Catherine Middleton, the Duchess of Cambridge now. The McLaughlins have a pedigree that goes back to King Edward I of England. Guy Ritchie was born into big money. Ritchie's mother, Amber, later married a baronet. His father's second marriage was to Shireen Ritchie, Baroness Ritchie of Brompton, a very, very elite member of society, a former model too, and later conservative politician, of course, and life peer. So you can see why. I said life, Pierre. Got the job forever. So you can see why Guy Ritchie would have a special interest in directing this latest broad brainwashing installment of the masses concerning the coming Antichrist in the new system, because that's what King Arthur represents. Guy Ritchie's version, the plot of King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, goes this way. Mordred, the bitter enemy, who's a corrupt sorcerer, along with his army, lays siege to Camelot, seeking to establish the dominance of magic wielders in the world to run it. Mages, as they're called, over mankind. Dominate mankind with the magic wielders. That's what's going on today. The black magicians are, in fact, engineering our society today. Around the world, it doesn't matter where you go. It's global. Just exactly what I've been speaking about. The programming of people's minds. In a word, control. In the movie Legend of the Sword, Camelot is a castle and court associated with legendary King Arthur. Absent in the early Arthurian material, Camelot first appears in the 12th century French romances, and after the Lancelot Grail cycle, eventually came to be described as the fantastic capital of King Arthur's realm and a wonderful symbol of the Arthurian world. A utopia is the message here, where everyone's happy. Here's that always constant vibe you get with Arthurian-based stories. One people, one land, one king. The story's located somewhere in Great Britain, and sometimes associated with real cities, though more usually its precise location is not revealed. I'm talking about Camelot. This place is known as the Camelot in legend. Located nowhere in particular, and can really be anywhere. It could be the whole world. I believe it to be the code word known by the elites as the New World Order's code word. This new global governance that's even now in place, waiting to be openly shown to be the power. Camelot has always been the template for this dream of the elites known as the Great Work. Now, if you're a regular listener to this show, ABFS, on Talk Radio AM 640, this is something quite familiar to you. Nevertheless, arguments about the location of the real Camelot's location have occurred since the 15th century and continue even to rage today in popular works and for tourism purposes, too. There have been many, many, many stories, books, documentaries, cartoons, and movies made about the subject of King Arthur, as you're well aware, because it's integral to the overlords who are shaping our world for their own satisfaction and their own ends. But let me continue with the plot on this latest installment of King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, who is the symbol of the coming Antichrist, by the way. The leader of this diabolical Camelot that's even now being engineered, set up in the background to be in the foreground very soon. Uther Pendragon, King of the Britons, infiltrates the evil Mordred's lair in the movie and beheads him, destroying his forces and saving Camelot. Later that night, though, trouble. Uther's brother, Vortigern, who was also vying for the throne, orchestrates a coup, sacrifices his wife Elsa to sea witches in order to summon a demon knight who kills Uther's wife and slays him in combat. The only survivor? Uther's son, who drifts away in a boat and eventually winds up in a town in England called Londinium, where he is found and raised by prostitutes who name him Arthur. Londinium, by the way, is the name of the original city of London, where it is today, built back in 43 A.D. by the invading Romans on the exact same location as I just said, as well we all know, in London, England, where it is today. Only it was not as big as they say. It was only the size of Hyde Park. Hyde Park size today was Londinium, the original city built by the Romans. Its bridge over the River Thames turned the city into a road nexus and major port, serving as a major commercial center in Roman Britain until its abandonment during the 5th century. I talked about that bridge too, and what it was all about a few shows back. Very, very intriguing show that was the information of things like, this little song, London Bridge is falling down. Well, I took you to the real exact meaning of that on that show. I hope you caught it. So, back to the plot. Arthur, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword out this weekend in 50 countries. Arthur grows into a skilled fighter and a man of the streets, along with his friends Rubio and Percival. The three confront a group of Vikings who had mistreated one of the prostitutes, forcing them to pay her a year's wages for their behavior. Afterwards, the brothel is raided by the Blacklegs. Those are Vortigern's minions, and Arthur learns that the Vikings were guests of the king and attacking them, therefore constituting a crime against him personally. Arthur tries to escape the city, but he's caught, put on a ship with hundreds of other men. He learns that a mysterious sword has appeared near Vortigern's castle, and the Blacklegs have been forcing all men of Arthur's age to go and see if they can try and pull it out from the rock, the stone, the surrounding stone that it's lodged in. Arthur tries. The result? Next on AVFS. It's Talk Radio AM 640. I'm the guy to call the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Just like to say hi to M.A. who wrote in. Hi, Space, here with a friend listening. With the aging Queen scare, this movie, could this not be the programming to accept the new king after the Queen dies, soon to come? A very interesting timing thought, isn't it? Because it is very, very, very curious on the date that was chosen finally in the end, because I told you earlier in the show how often the date was changed. But I believe it was always going to be on the 666 day, no matter what. They just did the runaround and the changes and the moving of the date for promotional promotional reasons. So, as I said before this last break, the plot of the flick. A mysterious sword appears near Vortigern's castle, and the Blacklegs, the army of Vortigern, the bad guy in the flick, have been forcing all men of about Arthur's age to see if they can try pull it out from the stone that it's stuck in. You've heard of this so often, it's ingrained in your head. I don't have to tell you about this brainwashing. It's been done since you were like 3. When Arthur tries, He pulls the sword out and quickly faints from the vast power it contains. Vortigern then meets with him in the dungeon, revealing his true lineage. Meanwhile, a woman, identifying herself as an acolyte of Merlin, the druid, meets with Uther's former general, Sir Bedivere. At Arthur's execution, the mage, the wizard, uses her magic to stage a diversion while Bedivere's men rescue Arthur. Now, I told you earlier, the mage are people that use black magic to control people. Vortigern wants to take the throne and use the mages to control the masses. Exactly what the elites are doing today. They have their motion pictures, they have their corporations. They control everyone, they control everything. So at Arthur's execution, the mage uses her magic to stage a diversion while Bedivere's men rescue Arthur. Taken to his hideout, Arthur initially refuses to help them, but soon collapses again when he tries to wield the sword. Suspecting that he lacks the willpower to control it, the black magicians, the mage, persuades Bedivere to take Arthur to the Blacklands. Now, the Blacklands are a realm where, years earlier, Merlin destroyed Mordred's tower in defiance of his evil. So it's revealed that Vortigern was responsible for the persuading Mordred to rebel against humanity, having grown jealous of Uther's power. Arthur, having restored the sword's magic now, returns, determined to destroy Vortigern for his crimes. So together with his friends and Bedivere's men, Arthur stages a series of ambushes and attacks to force Vortigern out of hiding. Aware that his maid is a spy for Bedivere, Vortigern announces plans to meet with his barons in Londinium, sending a body double in his place. The rebels quickly realize the deception, but attack anyway. In the process, one of them is captured, while Rubiu is severely wounded and left behind, one of the stalwart knights of Arthur, or to be. The others take refuge in a fighter's school run by Arthur's mentor, George, where they are quickly overrun by the Blacklegs, Vortigern's army. Seeing the mage being held at knife point, Arthur is overcome by his rage and single-handedly kills all of the enemy soldiers. And you've heard of the rumors of King Arthur in battle can slay hundreds of men in one day. As night falls and riots break out all over Londinium, the rebels take shelter in a safe house where they're soon joined by Rubio, one of his to-be knights, and his son Blue. Unbeknownst to them, the Blacklegs commander, Charjan, has been following the wounded Rubio, and he and Vortigern interrogate him for information. Arthur manages to save his son Blue, but not before he watches his father die, as Vortigern puts him to death. One of Arthur's faithful knights-to-be. Afterwards, Arthur, so angered by his failures, throws the sword into a lake and runs into the forest. When he stops at a small marsh, the Lady of the Lake. You've seen the classic painting of this. The Lady of the Lake. This has been historically driven into the minds of millions upon millions of people on the earth from this one portrait painted by the great artist. Lady of the Lake painting pulls him into her realm, and shows him a vision of the future. The Lady of the Lake is actually Satan, who takes you into, well, hell. Her realm shows the vision of the future, where England has been ruined by Vortigern's rule, and the people are left to suffer in misery, recognizing that only he, King Arthur, can put an end to his uncle's reign. Arthur reunites with Bedivere, George, and Percival to make the Trinity. When they return to the rebel hideout, however, they're going to discover all of their allies are dead. Vortigern, having found them thanks to information provided by the captured rebel, they encounter Karjan again, who delivers a message from the king, Vortigern. If Arthur does not surrender himself by nightfall, both the mage and Blue die. Bedivere is able to get the former released. That's the mage, in exchange for Arthur sending both himself, surrendering, and the sword too. So just as Vortigern is about to kill his nephew, a giant snake, controlled by the mage, the black magician, attacks, devours Karjan and his men, while the others free Vortigern's prisoners and lead them in revolt against the Blacklegs, Vortigern's army. So a desperate Vortigern then sacrifices his only daughter this time, his wife already been sacrificed, and is transformed into the demon knight, confronting Arthur in a separate dimension. Despite his fighting skill, Arthur's quickly beaten down. Just as he is about to submit, he witnesses a flashback of the moments his father was struck down, having turned his own body to stone to prevent Vortigern from seizing the sword. Arthur then snatches the sword before it impales Uther, who gives him the right to wield it. Arthur then destroys Vortigern's weapons and kills him. So in the aftermath, Arthur knights George and Percival and begins building a round table for them to meet at. He also dissolves Vortigern's pact with the Vikings. There's a new administration in town, it looks like, right? Declaring that they must respect England's power if they wish to avoid war. You Vikings, stay in your place, or I'll do you in like I did Vortigern. Blue, the son of Rubio, now dead, and the prostitutes arrive with the crown of Uther, which Arthur accepts. He then addresses his new subjects, holding the sword high in the air. So the movie King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, has a Hollywood ending, the traditional Hollywood ending. Like they say, and everyone lives happily ever after, where everything, after all, the consternation, is all right again. And King Arthur rightfully takes his birthright position as the head of the world of Camelot, with all of its citizens worshipping him as their king. That's the movie. But wow, the programming, the predictive programming, immense in this one. There's a book called The 21 Lessons of Merlin. It's by Douglas Monroe. He's an American druid who studied in Britain. He makes sense of how stories of King Arthur and Merlin actually lead to the possible discovery of the identity of the coming Antichrist, because that's what this flick is programming people to accept. One land, one people, one king. There's a part of the book where Monroe goes into a rather sinister-sounding poem that uses biblical language for King Arthur. It compares Monroe's poem to Revelation 17:8 and its description of the Antichrist as the king who was, is not, yet will be again. You can then instantly see the connection. It makes quite clear how a real King Arthur would return again and live his second advent, his second life, as the Antichrist. Equally strange is how some months before, Princess Diana was killed, and that a very young Prince William, firstborn of Princess Diana, was already being connected to this Arthurian figure. And what's more, it came from his mother's own words, Princess Diana's. That's next on Talk Radio AM 640, Spaceman. Emails to space640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Got some information, got a critique of the show, or you'd just like to say where in the world you're listening to AVFS on Talk Radio AM 640 from. Feel free to use one of those two addresses. I thank you very much. So I was saying before the break, 21 Lessons of Merlin, a book by Douglas Monroe. He's an American who and a Druid, by the way, who studied in Britain. And he makes a lot of sense on how stories of King Arthur and Merlin actually lead to the possible discovery of the identity of this coming Antichrist that I talk about every week. Now, there's a part in the book where Monroe actually goes into a weird poem that uses biblical language for King Arthur. It compares Monroe's poem to Revelation 17:8 in the King James Version of the Bible, describing the Antichrist as the king who was, King Arthur, is not, gone dead now, yet will be again. Now you can then instantly see the connection. It makes quite clear how a real King Arthur would return again and live his second life as the Antichrist. His Camelot. This time, the world. Equally as strange is how some months before that, as I was remarking before, when I was speaking about this, Princess Diana, mother of Prince William, just before she was killed, William being the firstborn of Princess Diana, and Diana herself was already connecting William to an Arthurian figure. What's more, it came from Diana's description, as well as other sources, that Prince William was in fact looked at by those in the world of witchcraft and wizardry as their own future Messiah figure. More on this right now. Tonight on AVFS, Talk Radio AM 640. It's about revealing the actual origins of not only the Antichrist, but most of the royal modern families of Europe, who can be traced to a single progenitor, ironically enough, also called the son of the devil in his time, Cain, and how his lineage has worked in secret behind the elites of the world toward bringing about their anti-God, this Antichrist, this banished leader who will come again and lead the New World Order. Yet not for themselves, as other people might tell you, but for Lucifer alone, and that a man who he shall possess, Lucifer possessing him, who is to be the coming Antichrist. Now it's said that the Antichrist is to be revealed in his time to the entire planet at the end of days, at a time of great technological advances, yet also at a time of great change and upheaval in the world, natural disasters, wars, the like, which describes the 21st century and the way it opened. Precisely. The scriptural account makes this clear. Yet what even some Christians too quickly assume is that the Antichrist must appear evil from the start, to which they only want to ascribe an Islamic connection with. That's not correct at all. Not correct at all. The Illuminati are going to use the Bible to produce their one-world government. They're going to follow it to the letter, all right. The King James Version of the Bible in Daniel chapter 9, verses 26-27, actually outlines the characteristics of the Antichrist, mentioning that he will be a European prince whom the whole world adores, a descendant of the ancient Roman Empire who becomes a king at a time when Europe is again unified as in the days of Rome. I would suggest to you today, the European Union today is the old Roman Empire reunited. Now this coming one world leader will be the one to bring the entire planet under a single international banner, with a single currency, a single religious system, and he will make it sound as if that this new world order of his is Earth's only hope for survival. The one, as they call him, in the world of the occult. The one that they've been waiting for is of the Merovingian bloodline, stretching back to the house of Cain, of course. It has to. The bloodline whose secret has been a closely guarded secret for many millennia by keepers of the Grail secret. Who begat who? All the way back from Cain. And who is the purest of the bloodline? The Knights of the Templar. We're given that challenge, and are the ones that have now got their man. Masonic lore states that the surviving Knights of the Templar banded together in Scotland, eventually established the basic tenets of Freemasonry, which is based on the Temple of Solomon's secret teachings. Now, the Templars were charged by the Roman Catholic Church with worshipping an idol named Baphomet. Urinating on the cross was one of their rituals. A ritual murder of children, worshipping the devil, committing acts of sodomy, bestiality. All this charged by the Roman Catholic Church. Though the order was supposedly disbanded and its leader Jacques de Molay executed, supposedly on a Friday the 13th, legend has it that a number of knights escaped to Scotland. Didn't get them all. Some Templars escaped and hid in Scotland, where they became protectors of a bloodline affiliated to these sorcerer kings known as the Merovingians, the Water Kings. The Stuarts, supposed descendants of King Arthur, the Kabbalistic Sun King of the Ages, is the family that Princess Diana belonged to. She was a Stuart. The conspiracy begins with Jesus escaping the cross, fleeing to France with Mary Magdalene bearing children for him. These children are of the Merovingian bloodline. Supposedly, there's even more to it. The family was perpetuated in several European families, too, not exclusively the Merovingians. For example, the bloodline was also established in Britain by Joseph of Arimathea, Jesus Christ's uncle, from which King Arthur and the other kings of Britain are supposedly descended from. Now, right now, King Arthur is only a legend, a myth. I believe it's going to be proven to be the truth. The Grail bloodline led to the Scottish House of Stuart, Princess Diana's bloodline. The bloodline that contained all of the Roman Catholic kings and queens of all of England's history, along with the Protestant ones, King Henry and the boys, the other side that fought. Now, the notion that Mary Magdalene was pregnant by Jesus at his crucifixion became especially entrenched in France. Several French kings promoted that legend, that descendants of Mary Magdalene's children founded the Merovingian line of European royalty, and the story was revived by Richard Wagner. That just happened to be Adolf Hitler's favorite composer. Richard Wagner, in his opera, Parsifal. Hitler, again, his most favorite opera of all of Richard Wagner's music, Parsifal. And again, it has a connection with Diana, Princess of Wales, who we're told had Merovingian blood. The first of the Sinclairs of the Stuart bloodline, which is the last name of Diana, Sinclair, to be born in Scotland, Henri St. Clair, as the French name went through some anglicizing from St. Clair to Sinclair, accompanied Godfrey de Bouillon to the Holy Land in 1096 and was present at the fall of Jerusalem. The first of the Sinclairs, Henri, was with the man who led the very first crusade into the Holy Land to take Jerusalem from the Muslims, Godfrey de Bouillon. Of Belgian descent, of course, the head of the EU today. More when I get back on Talk Radio AM 640. It's AVFS. I'll be down to call a Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 640. Email to spaceman@640toronto.com or space@640toronto.com. Thanks for the one that you sent. So the Sinclair family, first to be born in Scotland, Henri St. Clair, accompanied Godfrey de Bouillon to the Holy Land, Israel, in 1096 and was present at the fall of Jerusalem. He was accompanied by knights from 11 other leading Scottish aristocratic families. Representatives of all 12 families met regularly at Rosslyn Chapel before leaving for the Crusades, and for many centuries afterwards. Now, the group included ancestors of the Stuarts, whom the Sinclairs married into, and they were involved with the Templars throughout their history and with early Freemasonry in Scotland, with support of the Stuart cause, the Roman Catholic King-Queen bloodline, who warred against the Protestant King-Queen bloodline. The Rex Deuce legend suggested that the Stuarts were actually descended from among the ancient hierarchy in biblical Israel. Rosslyn Chapel is the guardian of the secrets of the Holy Grail, you see. Two royal families in Great Britain, one on each side, have claimed, Roman Catholic and Protestant, have claimed to be the descendants of the royal house of David, a bloodline which supposedly produced many of the ruling houses of Europe today, including the British monarchy, of course, and the family that now lives in Buckingham Palace. Not known by their real name, which is Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, but by their new name, the House of Windsor. The other family important to this lineage is the Scottish House of Stuart, the Spencers, whom most famously are descendants from the Scottish line, Princess Diana. While there is a discrepancy as to whether or not the Windsor claims to the throne of England are legitimate or not, being descendants of the Germanic house of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, as I said, most agree that the Stuart lineage are not only the rightful heirs to the throne of England and Scotland, yet also to the throne of David and Israel itself, the King of Israel, the King of Jerusalem. Knowing this, it was therefore of paramount importance that the Windsors, who in Buckingham Palace today, the Saxe-Coburg-Goths, seek out a virgin of the Merovingian bloodline to marry into, in effect, to finally legitimize their long-held occult power and authority, claimed of them, being descendants of Crusader Godfrey de Bouillon, who was given the honor of the kingdom and declared King of Jerusalem. Yes, Godfrey de Bouillon was the very first of the bloodline members to be called the King of Jerusalem. That was in 1099, as well as creating what they see would be a unique Christ descendant from such a union of their draconic lineages that would forever legitimize their tight grasp on the British monarchy. Therefore, this intriguing and most infamous of all arranged marriages between Prince Charles, and this Grail Princess Diana Spencer was not hatched solely by the Windsors themselves. Not in a million years. It was a far more ancient design and connected to the Knights Templar. Interestingly enough, 6 months after the royal wedding of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, while Diana was already 3 months pregnant with William, came the release of this movie from Hollywood. Remember Holy Blood, Holy Grail, in which the 3 authors made the shocking claim of the secret of the Knights Templar. This shocking secret, being propagated to the world in 1982, contained the genealogical record of the Davidic bloodline that passed through Jesus Christ and his descendants to become the Frankish Merovingian kings, a secret which curiously became the foundation of the modern occult itself, connected to their prophecy about the birth of a future Antichrist figure. This ancient secret that included a unique bloodline supposedly descended from King David himself was so powerfully wrought with arcane knowledge that it threatened the extravagant ruling classes of Europe and the Roman Catholic Church, granting the original Templars enough power to rival both Europe's nobles and the Roman Catholic Church itself with extinction. The Knights Templars practiced and prospered, worshipped a god named Baphomet, which many believed to be Satan, and in time, the Roman Catholic Church, as well as the new King of France, who it is said was awash in Templar debt, because they were in those days the bankers of the world. Nothing's changed, has it? Today it's the same. The bankers are behind all of this power, had grown to so incredibly powerful heights in such a short time. And these Knights Templar, who even the Roman Catholic Church were owing money to, are rounded up and put to death wherever they were found. Yet many were not found. The year was 1313. And of course their leader burned at the stake on a Friday the 13th. And the abrupt disappearance of a major part of the European infrastructure led some to speculate that the Templars had escaped into the underground, taking with them their vast wealth, their power, and their secret knowledge, and this lineage of this heretical bloodline. They took it all with them, the science, the secrets, where they patiently waited when and they left France in Scotland and subtly worked many of today's secret fraternal orders today, including the Scottish Rite Freemasonry, as well as the cunningly devised metaphysical movements which prepare for a new age. Even satanic cults themselves all trace their spiritual roots to Grail age, to the Grail, back to then. Even satanic cults themselves, back to Grail Templarism, as well as the so-called divine feminine, which we're seeing in spades today. While in Scotland, the Templars created the Jacobite movement, putting its cause behind the royal house of Stuart. The Catholic bloodline, the Davidic bloodline, had now secured a crown in what would become the most powerful country in the world. As Queen Elizabeth I dies without an heir, and James Stuart VI of Scotland becomes King James of England, the Knights Templar and their royal house of Stuart were then connected to the powerful bloodline and seat, and a bloodline which eventually would produce Lady Diana Spencer, the late Princess of Wales, Prince William's mother. The Merovingian kings, their supposed holy bloodline, have a rich and twisted history all their own, yet it's directly connected to the supposed findings of the Templars in that day. And they're the connective link between the Christ lineage and European royalty, which is believed to include the Habsburgs, Plantagenets, the Stuarts, among other families. According to the latest revived heresy that's being developed with a very specific purpose and time frame yet to play out, Jesus did not die on the cross and rise from the dead, becoming mankind's salvation. Not according to the Templars. Instead, it is claimed that he had sex with Mary Magdalene, survived the Roman crucifixion, and lived to father a number of divine children. The firstborn said to be a son named Judah, or Merovee, a name later given to the Merovingian king of France, who reigned from 447 to 458 AD in France, while others believed the child was actually a daughter, given the name of Sarah or Tamar, which became the name of the ultra-secretive organization whose task it was to protect future Merovingian descendants. Regardless of the supposed names, titles, endless genealogies, an entire race of enlightened, Christ-like beings, each leading to the next in succession in some messianic dynasty, has supposedly been passed down through the ages toward a final one, who would then be the one the occult world would be waiting for and would rule in the name of Christ, albeit meaning instead of Christ. This could only mean one personage. The Antichrist. The same who take these fanciful claims of Christ having holy children, who twist it into historical fact, also say these truths were kept hidden from the rest of the world until now, having been suppressed by the Roman Catholic Church itself, and revealed only by the original Knights Templar, who then passed their shocking revelations onto an underground stream of alchemists, astrologers, Kabbalists, necromancers, and elite royal families throughout various secret societies, such as the main inheritors of the Templarian secrets, the Freemasons of today. It's the Spaceman. More right after this break on Talk Radio, AM 640. I communicate by email, spaceman at 640toronto.com. One address, the other space at 640toronto.com. So as I was saying before this break just happened here, there is, I believe, the fact that this information becoming known today, what I have just given you with Jesus Christ escaping the cross, it's a new spin on historical stories. And it's now being tailor-made by Dan Brown, by Holy Blood, Holy Grail, that propagates Jesus Christ escapes this cross, has children, they become the crowned heads of Europe, key families, and the British royal family, in fact, links to this supposed bloodline and history, which is damning in of itself, as it turns out to be a lineage dating back to Cain and not Christ at all, passing through the Merovingian kings of France into Scotland, where it became known as the House of Stuart, of which Princess Diana is a member, descended from, and becomes her more legitimate trace to this bloodline of the Holy Grail, which is why, as it is believed, she was selected by the British royal family for the most infamous of arranged marriages. Now, I believe it was the Druids that picked the wife for Prince Charles. The family had nothing to do with it. These people are just born into their position and are like thoroughbred horses or the like, where they're really just bred for their genes and are the titular head, not necessarily the brains of the outfit. That's the Druids who are behind this cult. To the occult mind, Princess Diana literally was the Holy Grail, the receptor of Christ's blood, the embodiment of the divine feminine, and her womb would bring forth this powerful king into the world who provides the many curative powers attributed to the Grail King for the healing of a wounded world. With certain guidance from their spirit masters over a span of 6 millennia, secret societies such as the modern Knights Templar today and others each have their own role as protector to this ancient lineage, as guardians of the Holy Grail, unseen hands throughout the ages carrying out the will of one who made it. So this bloodline was always to find its own way down through history, through the vanquishing of ancient advanced civilizations, through the rise and fall of great empires, through violent crusades and times of inquisition, right smack dab into our own modern age of today, and into its intended final recipient, who, according to the occult texts, seems much more to be an Antichrist figure than anything remotely resembling Jesus Christ. Might it be, therefore, that the bloodline, being the secret of all ancient secret societies, is currently being made public and purposefully released with predictive program into movies, books, and all manner of communication into the mainstream of society as a way to lay a foundation for further secrets to come, to be divulged. Worse than previously thought. Different than anyone expected, that kind of thing. In order to deceive the masses. I believe this is going to happen. It's going to be true, what I said. Have you ever noticed that all of these same secrets go at great strides to degenerate the divinity of Jesus Christ while promoting a questionable lineage that is actually connected to the coming Antichrist? Through the ages, the secret of the Holy Lineage has gone by many names, strange metaphors, and occult symbols in order to confuse. With those possessing it, believing themselves to be these true and rightful heirs of Jerusalem itself, they being the true kingdom of their God on earth and gods of a divine monarchies whose right it is to rule the world. The divine right of kings, it's called. Some might say it's heresy at its highest form, but it's really their own elitist belief and prophecy, along with the druid black magic weaponry, in a soon revealed king from the lineage of King David, of Anglo-Messianic descent, which arises to preside over all the world at a time when he's needed most. That is most intriguing. So the British royal family looked for a young virgin, not for the love that many, including some think Diana herself, wanted. But I don't believe that for a moment. She knew who she was. No. The only. For the Merovingian ancestry Diana held, knowing the firstborn child produced would be an heir to the Merovingian Grail lineage, and therefore rightful heir to the throne of David, the one who was perceived to have all the credentials to make himself the world's Messiah, yet who will be the Antichrist. The King James Version of the Bible refers to this one as the last evil king and beast, who together with his prophet shall deceive the nations and Israel into a covenant made not with peace and security, but with death and hell. What else should we know in advance to this obvious Da Vinci Code disinfo campaign that's been running now for a few decades, which is actually serving to educate and outright deceive the world about a supposed bloodline from Christ, taking us? The hidden heirs, guarded through time by the Knights Templar, devised a method, a special method to pass on the sacred knowledge, a system that eventually developed into Freemasonry as we know it today. Control of business organizations, control of corporations. There's a corporate roundtable even today. And when it's called, all of the corporate heads of the entire corporate world come to one place to listen to one group speak to them. Rosicrucianism and the Invisible College is involved here, which later transmuted, by the way, into the Royal Society of England. Godfrey de Bouillon, the man who led the first crusade from Europe to Jerusalem to take it back from Muslims, declared the first king of Jerusalem is a Merovingian bloodline member, and was, according to medieval legend, descended from Lohengrin himself, the Knight of the Swan, who was in one Grail text, the son of Percival, of all people, the original Grail hero. But the real similarities are conspicuously shown when you compare a few aspects of the Celtic Arthurian legend to the Merovingian Empire legend. There are at least a dozen families in Britain today, and Europe, with numerous collateral branches who are of Merovingian blood, surely. These include the houses of Habsburg-Lorraine, Plantat, Luxembourg, Montpezat, Montesquieu, and various others. According to the Priere documents, the Sinclair family in Britain, of which Lady Diana belonged to, is also allied to the bloodline, as are various branches of the Stuarts. All of these houses could claim a pedigree from Jesus. It seems to be another deception designed to bestow apparent credibility on the Merovingian survival story, this time laying a trail that leads to Old Londinium, modern-day London today. All this prompted Berger, Lee, and Lincoln, the authors of the Holy Blood, Holy Grail book, to hypothesize that the mysterious Grail represented a real lineage, a real bloodline. Yet, whose bloodline was it? The royals of Great Britain had arranged for the destruction of Christianity. Well, I should rephrase that. The royals of Great Britain are partakers of the Druid plan that have arranged for the destruction of Christianity. The Holy Grail blasphemy represents the blood of Jesus as having been preserved in this royal family, which is heir to the throne at Jerusalem too. The protocols of the Elder of Zion speaks to and of a new king of the holy seed of David, who will one day preside over a Masonic kingdom, who might be the heir of this purported royal bloodline of Jesus, deemed worthy to sit on the throne of David. Just what did the marriage of Lady Diana to Prince Charles do in this occult world of the Druids? Find out next if you don't already know. On Talk Radio AM 640. This is AVFS. I'm Space. Back with more in a minute. Please send your emails too. It's the only way I communicate. To space640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. So, the coming world leader, commonly known as the Antichrist, has at least 33 titles subscribed to him, or ascribed to him, rather, in the Old Testament, and 13 titles in the New Testament. Yet, despite what some may think, he is only called the Antichrist 5 times in all of Scripture, and in all of those are found within the epistles of John, possibly the same man who wrote Revelation, where the Antichrist is then called the Beast. But there are 2 more titles, in particular, that reappear 4 times between Isaiah and Revelation in the King James Version of the Bible, which intrigues you even more. The coming Antichrist is called a prince in Daniel 9, verses 26-27. The people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, is the line. Yet he is also called a king in Revelation 17, verse 8. The king who was, is not, yet will be again. Surmising here that the king who was, King Arthur, and the one who will be again, his second coming. King Arthur returning again in another body, reincarnated in the coming king. This shows you that the coming Antichrist is not just metaphorically called a king, as some believe, but that he will actually move through the normal procession of a monarchical tradition, being first a European prince, then a king. Daniel 9, verse 26-27, which makes a biblically common dual-layered prophecy whose first fulfillment came in 66 A.D., the year of a great omen by way of a large comet. When Vespasian, along with his son Titus, fitting the Roman prince archetype, and his armies destroyed both Jerusalem and the temple, the city and the sanctuary, over the next 4 years until Jerusalem became a wasteland, yet its future and final fulfillment shall occur with the Antichrist, along with his false prophet, and armies destroy that future third temple, and with it, Jerusalem. The scriptures in the King James Version of the Bible use this kind of dual-layered prophecy more than once, and it's always confused people. Yet we know the prophecy in Daniel is referring to the Antichrist because of Christ's own prophetically coded language found within Matthew 24, verses 3 right through 33, among others, in which he links Daniel's entire prophecy about the abomination of desolation, the future prince to come, to the end-time Antichrist. And the key to unlocking the truth is found in verse 3. That's verse 3. It goes, "As he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, 'Tell us when these things shall be. What shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world?'" In this part, the King James Version of the Bible, Christ makes it clear what was meant by Daniel's prophecy when providing the interpretation that there were two distinct destructions coming upon Israel. The first by a Roman and his Roman army. The later fulfillment in the end times by the Antichrist, a European prince that arises out of a nation formerly included in the ancient Roman Empire. Interestingly, London itself, where Buckingham Palace is located, is actually created and founded by the Romans around 33 AD, the same year Christ was crucified. And founded by the Romans around 33 AD, the same year, 33 AD. It quickly became a large industrial Roman port city, Londinium did, linking London directly to Rome, after which Rome then flooded thousands of troops in England through their new city stronghold, where they conquered ancient Britain north all the way to Hadrian's Wall, which is still in place today in some parts. Biblical prophecy authors and researchers as well have debated for decades, announcing the Antichrist must be a Roman and rise out of Rome, from their linear understanding, I guess, of the scriptures in Daniel and Revelation. But a more careful look at those same prophecies, however, clearly indicate that the coming prince arises out of a nation and a city that was part of the ancient Roman Empire, not Rome itself, just part of the empire. The fact that Londinium, was actually created by Roman hands does lend an interesting connection, and shows you that London virtually became, in effect, the new Rome by 66 AD, 33 years after it was founded. Britain officially became part of the Roman Empire by 84 AD, whereby the Roman legions stayed there until around 410 AD. Pope Benedict himself actually marked that occasion with a visit when he was Pope to visit England on the 1600th anniversary of Rome's relinquishing power over Great Britain. It was the very first official visit ever by a Roman Catholic Pope since leaving. The very first official visit by a Roman Catholic Pope to visit England was Pope Benedict the 16th on the 1600th anniversary of Rome relinquishing power over Great Britain, just a few years ago. And I covered it right here on AVFS on Talk Radio AM 640. As Rome and the Roman Empire itself waned in power, England and its new capital city of London gained in power. When Rome lost in prestige, London gained in prestige and global influence. So looks like the elites have taken down the Roman Empire and we're setting up the British one. Today we have a prince and a soon-to-be king about to rise from his ancient Roman nation whose power still sits upon many waters, as it's described in the Revelation chapter of King James Version of the Bible, which brings to mind that apocalyptic great harlot, Mystery Babylon of Revelation 18, who holds in her hand the golden grail of blood. Add to this certain facts now surfacing, attempting to expose the secretive occult factions behind the American and behind the British governments and their intelligence agencies. This special relationship we're always told that they have, whose end goal is the creation of a British-led Anglo Empire uniting the world in peace while bringing forth an Aryan, Arthurian figure to the forefront after a great global destruction at a time when the world is weakened enough and in need of such a leader to come and help them and get them out of their problems. And we have all the makings now of the ultimate conspiracy to come true, don't we? We aren't told who this future ruler might be, yet the occult underground is supposedly preparing their ranks for a young, charismatic prince who will be seen in the future as a King Arthur returned. Shortly before her untimely death in France, the late Princess Diana herself is quoted as saying her own words, "I believe Wills," it's her name for William, "can rebuild Camelot, and I will be his Merlin. Together we will return to the chivalry, pageantry, and the glory that was King Arthur's court. William will remake the British monarchy by showing love, leadership, and compassion." The end of the quote by Lady Diana herself when she was alive. Again, "I believe Wills can rebuild Camelot, and I will be his Merlin. Together we will return to the chivalry, the pageantry, the glory that was King Arthur's court. William will remake the British monarchy by showing love, leadership, and compassion." Oh, Lady Di knew who she was, all right. And soon the world, it's going to be revealed to it, too. Spaceman, it's Talk Radio, AM 640. More on the other side of this break. Let's say VFS, it's Talk Radio, AM 640. Communicate by email. Got two locations, space640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. So wherever you are in the world, if you want to just say where you're listening, or you got some information you'd like to pass along, or you have even a critique of the show, feel free, please, and thank you very much for the one that you've sent already. If you have, I really appreciate those, I really do. So, according to the Illuminati, the overlords of this earth, the ones that are shaping our world, the Antichrist, King Arthur, will draw around him the bravest and the noblest knights in the realm. They and their monarch will then comprise the circle of the round table. In Great Britain today, certain members of the Illuminati, including Prince Charles and Prince Philip, take part in rituals and symbols of an odd secret society called the Order of the Garter. You've heard of it, I'm sure. This order, with its ceremonial magic, is thought to be a precursor to the coming establishment of this round table. So demented are the leaders of the Illuminati that they actually fancy themselves to be the modern-day inheritors of the Arthurian legend. Upon the appearance, expected soon, of their great and divine king or ruler, they would be knights of the Circle of the Round Table. So you can see how dedicated and loyal this surrounding group can be and are. The state of Prince Charles and Lady Diana's marriage was one of the prime reasons the Queen clearly indicated she intended to continue as monarch until her death. If there was a formal separation or divorce, Charles would find it all but impossible to take the religious vows at his coronation as king and head of the church. If those events did indeed unfold, then the throne of England would pass directly to Prince William. And they have. That's why I believe the throne of England will pass directly to Prince William. The Queen has appointed Prince William to be a royal knight companion, by the way, of the most honorable Order of the Garter. He's already in the elitist order, this circle, this tight circle of the Round Table, the inner circle, the inner sanctum. The Order of the Garter is the most senior, the most oldest British order of chivalry, and was founded by Edward III. Way back in 1348, the future King, Prince William, became the 1,000th knight in the register of that ancient order, of the Order of the Garter. Drop the zeros, you have one. The one. A milestone, really. Reaching 1,000 knights. Because there are only so many members of the Order of the Garter. And when one dies, another takes their place. But they must die first. Prince William came along to be the 1,000th knight in the register of this ancient order. It was thought that in 1344, King Edward III, inspired by the legend of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, made a spectacular demonstration of his interest in Arthurian legend during a tournament at Windsor Castle. He also promised to renew King Arthur's fraternity of knights. Did King Edward III? With all the paragons of knightly virtues, with a complement of 300 men. Work also even began on a gigantic circular building 200 feet across within the upper ward of the castle to house this so-called Order of the Round Table, an order which then eventually became the Order of the Garter later. When he would become king, Prince William will be the first monarch ever to descend from King Charles II since Queen Anne. His royal bloodline will be traced up not on the Windsors, but on the Spencers, because the Stuarts preceded the Hanovers. The Hanovers, Queen Elizabeth II's direct bloodline, mounted the British throne when the last Stuart monarch, Queen Anne, died without a direct successor. Prince William is now preparing his future role as king. He trained in all branches of the British military, after which all kings must. After the death of his mother in 97 and his great-grandmother, the Queen Mum, in 02, he's now considered as the most beloved figure in the kingdom of the royal family and the most popular royal family member also. His looks that strongly resemble his mother, together with the Spencers genes, add to his appeal, and occult magic. In an excerpt from the best-selling book Diana, Life of a Legend, you can glean quite a lot, quite an insight, to say the least, of what Princess Diana thought of the future of her son, her oldest son, Prince William. Prince William could be a great leader if he was taught about Arthurian symbolism. Princess Diana said, and I quote, I'll say it again, I believe wills can rebuild Camelot, and I will be as Merlin. Together we will return to the chivalry, the pageantry, the glory that was King Arthur's court. William will remake the monarchy by showing love, leadership, and compassion. Wills, of course, is the nickname of the royal family's pet name for William. And they also call him Wombat, by the way. You know what? In the power animals symbolism, the wombat, which is really indigenous to Australia, it's a mammal, marsupial, which means it has its pouch for its young ones. The female does. The wombat is a totem of resourcefulness, stability, and foundation. This is why the royals have a pet name Wombat for William. Wombats have long claws adapted for digging. They teach us how to dig beneath the surface to acquire the resources needed for change. Strong and heavily built, with short, powerful legs and strong claws, you see, the wombat holds the teachings of stability and foundation. See how they're describing wills already? They stand their ground in most situations and are not easily intimidated. They're industrious, determined, and very smart. They have a large brain and know how to use it. These traits are inherent in wombat medicine. People yet not always used. Wombats ask you to wake up and use the gifts that are your birthright. Use your will constructively. But don't be too pushy in your determination to achieve. Wombats are playful and will frolic with what seems like endless energy. They're also quite fast-moving when they need to be. Their small ears hear frequencies and sounds unknown to humans, and their small eyes can see what lies between the spaces. This indicates that their psychic vision and psychic hearing are fully developed. What a power animal the wombat is, Those with this totem often find themselves in situations where their psychic skills are tested, criticized, ignored, or praised, and they are reminded to honor their truth and not be intimidated by others. One of the reasons why the royal family has a pet name for Prince William, Wombat. I'm the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. More right after this. Hey, it's the Spaceman. Talk Radio, AM 640, and a view from space. That's all it is. Emails to spaceman@640toronto.com or space@640toronto.com. Thanks for yours. So the 1982 birth of Prince William, many believe, is King Arthur's magical return. The 1982 birth of Prince William, King Arthur's magical return. This according to the Druids and according to the New Agers, whom the Druids control. They control all occultists, Rosicrucians, the Theosophists, the Black Magicians, the Druids. The Illuminati use astrology, sacred geometry, and numerology as their guides. For instance, the Queen Mother, Queen Mum, always used to dress in clothes with shades of colors that were analogous to the planet that governed each day. Because there is a planet that governs each day, you see. For example, Saturn governs Saturday, so it's named after Saturn. Or Sunday, the Sun. Or Wednesday, Mercury. It's also very well known that Lady Di was an absolute fanatic about astrology, the tarot cards, and other mancia. For example, when the birth of Prince William was scheduled for the day June 22, to match the solstice summer, when the sun reached its maximum annual height in 1982 in the sky. For example, grade 0 for Cancer, 0 degrees for the Northern Hemisphere, which would be perfect. The perfect analogy for someone destined to become king one day. Another example was when Prince Charles married Lady Diana. That day, an eclipse occurred of the sun. The union of the sun and the moon, or the king and queen. And even his marriage with Camilla Parker Bowles, that was originally scheduled for that day, had an eclipsed sun in Aries in 2005, and eventually had to be postponed. Do you remember why? The Pope died. Pope John died that day, of course, by accident or by plan, you might ask. I did a few shows on that. I would say planned. Pope John Paul II, born and died in weeks in which there were eclipses. Pretty strange, don't you think? In the occult world, they do nothing without consulting the stars. Imagine the deep thought, the history that went into the birthing of the next king of the British Isles. Here are the eclipses and the events in Diana and Prince William's life, and at Diana's death. Prince Charles and Diana married July 29, 1981. That day, there was a solar eclipse. Prince William was born at St. Mary's June 21, 1982. That day, there was a solar eclipse. Prince Charles and Diana announced their divorce December 9, 1992. There was a lunar eclipse. Princess Diana killed in the suspect crash of August 31st, 1997. Next day, a solar eclipse. The King Arthur solar eclipse. The last solar eclipse of the millennium was August 11th, 1999. The solar eclipse on August 11th, 1999 happened at exactly 11:11 a.m. over Tintagel, England. Considered by many in the occult to be the literal seeding moment for the spiritual rebirth of the new Aquarian Messiah, what the Christians call the Antichrist. According to one New Age author, this event is the representative of the rebirth of the Arthurian archetype, an old avatar for a new age. Prince Arthur, living his second life, August 11, 1999, at 11:11 a.m. over Tintagel, in England, considered by many in the occult world to be the literal seeding moment for the spiritual rebirth of the new Aquarian Messiah. How fitting is that description, because according to their modern neo-prophets, the rising of Arcturus, Arthur, represents the cosmic return of King Arthur. What's more, many in their ranks agree that the most startling piece of evidence relating to the solar eclipse of August 11, 1999, to King Arthur, is that his star of Arcturus rose precisely to its highest point during mid-eclipse. Arcturus is also known, by the way, as the star of Satan. Revelation 9:11 makes very clear they had a king over them, which is the angel of the abyss, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon, meaning the destroyer. And no wonder, for September 11th, 2001, was a satanic calling card and portal leading us down a short path towards a final countdown, ending in the Antichrist and Armageddon to come. To occultists, the king to return is Thoth, the ethereal king of Atlantis, bringing with him the emerald tablets to change, through metaphysical alchemy, men into gods, heralding a new enlightenment for mankind. Important, too, to Freemasons are the rituals and the rites of the star Sirius, the dog star, for it is represented in the symbol of the blazing star who came from the heavens to enlighten mankind. This same star, Sirius, the dog star, was earlier depicted as Horus, the conquering child king, or star child, who, according to occult and Masonic belief, shall yet speak through and embody one man, one king, one who will rule and reign and be seen as the great restorer of the nations. In Masonic writings, the constellation Orion is also very important and sacred, representing the returning of a conquering Messiah, just as it was for the ancient Egyptians. The Egyptians, believing that their great dying king Pharaoh, being possessed of the sun, had ascended to the stars to be reborn in the future. Prince William has also recently been connected to the demon star Angol. The now obvious omen that occurred on August 11, 1999, took place on the 222nd day of the year, and exactly 144 days before the year 2000. 9 months after this 11th day of August 1999 came the date May 5th, 2000, when nearly all the planets of this 11th day of August 1999 came May 5, 2000, when nearly all of these planets of our solar system were perfectly aligned in a row, all behind the sun. In a row, all 11 planets. This portent, the sign, combined with the 9/11 symbology and its own connections to the eclipse, was ultimately to send a powerful message to Satanists around the world and for the Masons, telling them their long-awaited Aquarian age had finally arrived and their ancient British God King had been spiritually reborn. 11 months after the August 11th, 1999 date, Arthurian solar eclipse brought the eclipse of July 1, 2000, on what should have been the 39th birthday of Princess Diana. 1 year, 1 month after the alignment of the planets on May 5th, 2000, was the Druid summer solstice, June 21, 2001, Prince William's date of birth. On that same day, there was a rather unique solar eclipse over Africa with an unusually bright corona. Coincidentally enough, Prince William was visiting Africa at the time, completing a 3-month gap year there. A gap year is also known as a year abroad, a year off. It's time to take some time off and time out to go do something other than schooling. You can imagine the schooling that he had been through as this coming king. the education of who he was, how he is to act, the power that is his to wield. Also, something just as interesting occurred a few months earlier when Prince William was in Chile. The dark shadow of another eclipse blighted the landscape there as well. In addition to these events, on June 21st, 2001, was also a number of giant solar flares striking the Earth, as well as a comet called Linear C/2001 A2, burning through the sky, all on the same day, while those Druids and others back in England continued to worship at Stonehenge on into the night of this coming of this new king. Exactly 1 year later, June 21, 2002, saw a day very much like the 1999 King Arthur solar eclipse, with Mars, the red dragon, shining unusually bright in the sky. It reportedly was being closer to Earth than it had been in 1,000 years, shining from the constellation of the Sword. Yet June 21st, 2002 is perhaps more infamous for being the day that, well, Nostradamus predicted a new king would arise in stature. How about that? Who would later lead the world in global peace, and that an unexpected star falling would herald this event. Strangely enough, it was reported precisely on June 21, 2002, that day, that a killer asteroid had just missed our planet, coming within a third of the distance between Earth and the Moon. And scientists themselves admitted that it had struck Earth. If it would have, we would have already been living in a very different world already. Again, all these strange events happening directly on or around Prince William's day of birth. Space, Talk Radio AM 640, and AVFS. There's more right after this. It's the Spaceman, Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Thanks for the one that you sent. I appreciate everything that you send me. I really do. Thank you. June 21, 2002, birth date of Prince William. Very much like the 1999 King Arthur solar eclipse, there was another solar eclipse June 21st, 2002, with Mars, the red dragon, shining unusually bright in the sky. And at this one, reported by our authorities, that it was the closest Mars had been in over 1,000 years. And it was shining from the constellation of the Sword. Yet 2002, June 21st, is even more infamous for being the day that Nostradamus predicted a new king would arise in stature, who would later lead the world in global peace. Nostradamus, a millennia ago, calling a June 21, 2002 eclipse with a king being born. It's Prince William. Then, as if that was not enough, there was a comet that fell, because Nostradamus called that it would be a comet that would fall, a star would fall, heralding this event of this coming king. And it was reported precisely on June 21, 2002, a killer asteroid just missed planet Earth, coming within a third of the distance between the Earth and the Moon. Yes, yet another sign in the heavens that did prove disastrous was the 1997 comet Hale-Bopp, as it seemingly cut right through the constellation of Cassiopeia, represented the Queen. In ancient times, comets were always known to spell doom for a certain royal or a certain royal family itself living on the Earth at the time of its sighting, not just in Europe, yet in Egypt, China, most of the ancient world. In China, comets were even known as broom stars for the way they were said to sweep away the ruling family or emperor of the time. In 1997, as Hale-Bopp silently burned through Cassiopeia, an omen which seemed to spell death for a queen. Princess Diana, killed in Paris. There's so much overwhelming esoteric meaning to all of this. A unique mother was Diana, representing the moon goddess, as well as her first son, William, representing the sun god, spoken about within the writings of occultists like Aleister Crowley, who penned Moonchild years before even Princess Diana was born. And yet, it is so utterly prophetic, or is he simply sticking to the plan, the master plan, passed down through the ages, known as the Great Work? With the surviving Sunchild remembered against the template of the Moon Mother, it can be easily seen how and why the Antichrist symbol is both the sun and the black sun, which is the eclipsed sun, of course. ABC actually uses it as their logo, by the way. More recently, some in the occult have even added to the eclipse symbology displayed around it a circular serpent eating its own tail, known as the Ouroboros. Occultists see it as a symbol of renewal. Satanists see it as a sign of their Messiah, yet its very real scientific interpretation is related to the Milky Way galaxy, keeping a great time cycle that ends in catastrophic change at the point where the serpentine galaxy devours itself, which many ancient cultures may attribute to be a death of this present age, making way for the next. Another related occult symbol, the Centellia Ion, which gives hope for a new age, rising out of the old, depicts our sun rising out of the mouth of the Ouroboros, that circular snake biting its own tail, which occurred on the winter solstice, December 21st, 2012, at 11:11 Greenwich Mean Time. Now, the red dragon is mentioned 4 times in the King James Version of the Bible, but only once does it mention to depict Satan. The first time is in Daniel 8, verse 24. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. The second time is in Revelation 13, verse 2. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. The third time is in Revelation 13, verse 4. And they all worshipped the red dragon, which gave power unto the beast. Then in Revelation 12, 3 and 9 comes the fourth mention, where the red dragon is actually named as being Satan. Revelation 12, 3-9 states, "Behold, a great red dragon rising, called the devil and Satan." Not only is the red dragon identified as Satan, but it also conjures up the image of the serpent in the Garden of Eden, which tempted Eve with lust and death's curse. It also conjures up the ancient sea dragon Leviathan, mentioned in Job. But however rare, the red dragon is in the Bible, and it sure isn't rare to see the symbol of a red dragon and its curled tail in the form of either an S or a 6, whatever you choose to see, to represent those who have Welsh blood and ancestry, because the red dragon, you see, is the national symbol of Wales and the symbol of King Arthur. What's more is that the ancient symbol of this blood, this red beast, was emblazoned on the banners of the Britons, once and future king called Arthur. The dragon was King Arthur's royal symbol. And it was the red dragon that was also atop the Roman standards of Titus's army. The same army which destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, of who were prophesied to return and carry out the same act under the future Antichrist, calling them the people of the prince that shall come against Israel. As you've just heard, right from the King James Version of the Bible, the Antichrist prince receives his throne, power, and authority from the dragon, which is to say, directly from Satan. Ancient Druidic prophecies attributed to Merlin refer to a last world empire from Wales, a willful king who shall lead the world, in reference to the once and future king, Arthur. And so you can see clearly how this vision of the red dragon is inextricably tied into the Antichrist, even as the 20th century saw the red dragon make the official ensign of the British royal family in London, and is even now the symbol of the current reigning prince that shall come. The red dragon, of course, is a symbol of ancient Wales. Originally, only a handful of native princes had their claim to this overlordship of Wales even recognized by the English crown. The first known to have used such a title was Owain Gwynedd, adopting the title Prince of the Welsh around 1165, after earlier using Rex Val, King of Wales. This name, Gwynedd, goes back to the origin of the area, too. As an island, in fact, Anglesey was a good defense position, and because of this, Aberfraw became the site of the court of the Kingdom of Gwynedd. Anglesey still figures prominently in British monarchical history, even to this day. More on the military connection between Prince William and Anglesey and King Arthur in a few minutes here on the show on ABFS, on Talk Radio AM 640. Now, the tradition of investing the heir of the monarch with the title as Prince of Wales is said to have begun in 1301, when King Edward I of England invested his son, Edward Carnarvon, with the title at a parliament held in Lincoln. In all, there had been a total of 21 that have been invested as the Prince of Wales. Only 21 in all, ever, all time. But 3 of those 21 carried the title Prince of Wales as an independent title only, meaning of Wales only. The other 18 received the title as the heir apparent to the British throne. And as you know, 18 is a hidden 666. When Prince William is invested with this title, and he will be, not yet, he will be the 22nd all-time, a double 11. His birth, a double 11. 11:11 a.m. on the 21st of June. A solar eclipse on the first day of summer. The solstice. It's the Spaceman. Talk Radio AM 640. More next. I'm the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. Thanks for that you sent. His father, Prince William's father, Prince Charles, was made the Prince of Wales at the 1969 royal investiture in northern Wales at the accursed Carnarvon Castle, where all princes of Wales are invested, by the way. And there was actually some deaths on that very day that he was invested. I believe, yes, it was 2 members of the Welsh defense movement that died that day. It was a bomb aboard a British royal train exploded prematurely, supposedly trying to blow the royals up. But a couple couple of deaths on that day that Prince Charles was invested as the Prince of Wales, and there have been very few in the world. I believe that Prince William will soon be in that order. Carnarvon, by the way, is a royal town, designated a royal town, and Queen Elizabeth had a lot to do with it. In 1963, the royal town, you see, places and names with royal patronage in the United Kingdom, including both those granted a royal title or status by express wish or a specific monarch. And then they're given the title of royal town. Now, Carnarvon, declared a royal town by Queen Elizabeth II, because it relates to historic ownership of that area by the Crown. It's by royal charter. And Carnarvon, because of its connection to Prince of Wales, all of them invested at Carnarvon Castle. The first Prince of Wales was Edward I's son, all the way up to the latest being Prince Charles, and I believe the next after that, who will be invested as Prince of Wales, will be Prince William. So, when his father, Prince Charles, was invested in 1969, the Red Dragon of Wales was emblazoned everywhere that day in the now very infamous ceremony. It was on banners, posters, also in the crowd themselves. It's just awash in the Red Dragons. The large Red Dragon cut into the backrest of the throne in which Charles sat while swearing his oath as Queen Elizabeth II spoke to Charles with hauntingly familiar scriptures, as if reading word for word straight from Revelation 13:2. At this globalized television event, she announced, "This dragon gives you your power, your throne, and your authority," to which Prince Charles replied to the world, "I am now your liege man," meaning Lord man, and worthy of your earthly worship. Revelation 13:2 in the King James Version of the Bible states, "And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority." In 1254, Henry III passed the lordship of Chester, but not the title of Earl, to his son Edward, who was Edward I bestowed in the earldom of Chester on his son Edward when he created him in being the first Prince of Wales in 1301. I was just remarking about that. The Duchy of Cornwall was first created by Edward III for his son Edward, the Black Prince of 1337. And you know as well as I do that the Duchess of Cornwall today is the second wife of Prince Charles. The earldom of Carrick merged into the Crown of Scotland with the accession in 1306 of the Earl of Carrick. Robert the Bruce, who transferred the title to his son David in 1328. The title became automatically subsidiary to the Dukedom of Rothesay, by the way, in 1469. The High Stewardship merged into the crown with the accession of Robert VII, High Steward of Scotland, as Robert III. In 1371, the Dukedom of Rothesay was created by Robert III of Scotland for his son David in 1398. All three of these titles merged into the same person after the union of Scottish and English crowns in 1603, and the accession of the Freemason James VI of Scotland as James I now of England. The one who rewrote the Bible. So, with that quick historical update, you can be most assured that what ritual the Father was the central figure in, that same exact tradition will be passed on to the Son, and so on, and so on, and so on from that moment, all the way back in 1301, on, all the way up to now, being made for the impostor, who is the Antichrist to be, possibly, to ascend to the false throne of the King David lineage in England, while also having his stake in Wales, and now Scotland, where he attended university in her Rosslyn Chapel. There is one more powerfully meaningful, yet quite hidden connection with the Antichrist. Diana's child, Prince William, and the Red Dragon of Wales, and that is the future King of England, is actually believed to have been conceived in Wales during an October 1981 three-day visit by Prince Charles and his then newlywed Princess Diana, it being Diana's first public engagement and first ever official function outside of London under her new title, Princess of Wales. Today, many believe that in their zeal to protect the Merovingian lineage from ever being tainted or producing an unwanted royal heir, who would forever be connected to the future King of England, the Knights Templar ensured Princess Diana, before any possible new marriage or pregnancy could even result. By mid-1997, both marriage and pregnancy were rumored to be true. She dies just 2 weeks later, after crashing into the 13th pillar in a Paris tunnel. And many people that are very, very knowledgeable of the subject believe that Prince William was actually conceived that night when Prince Charles and Princess Diana visited Carnarvon Castle and stayed that evening. Carnarvon Castle, as I said, is a castle in a royal town, Carnarvon, in Gwynedd, northwest Wales. It takes its name from the Roman fortifications. The town's best known for its great stone castle built by Edward I of England, and consequently sometimes seen as a symbol of English domination. Edward's architect was James of St. George, was said to have modeled the castle on the walls that guarded ancient Constantinople, the gateway to the east. What's even more intriguing, especially when you understand that the global war on terrorism is merely an extension of that age-old battle called the Holy Crusades, that's been going on for a very, very, very long time. Edward I was a supporter of the Crusader cause. Mom is the Welsh name of Anglesey, the island and county off the northwest coast of Wales. It takes its name from the British ensis Mona, appearing first during the Roman era as Mona. It's the Mona of Tacitus, Pliny the Elder, and Dio Cassius. It's called Mon Mam Cymru, Mon, Mother of Wales, by Giraldus, for the claimed ability of the fertile land to produce enough food for the whole of Wales. It's the largest island in the Irish Sea, ahead of the Isle of Man. And as I said, the Isle of Anglesey plays a huge role in the history of the Merovingian sorcerer kings. William's first public appearance was March 1st, 1991, St. David's Day, King David, during an official visit to his parents to Cardiff, Wales. The King Arthur legend was a very powerful Anglesey connection too. So, of course, would Prince William, as it turns out, remember him graduating from his search and rescue training a few years ago? Remember? He spent all of his time at Anglesey. That was his home base. It just happened to be the Royal Air Force's RAF Valley where his home base was for the fast jet training school that he attended, and home to the 22nd Squadron search and rescue helicopters he was belonging to then. There's more when I return on Talk Radio AM 640. I'm Space. Spaceman is Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to spaceman@640toronto.com or space@640toronto.com. Thanks for the one that you've sent. So what I'm telling you here is the birth of Prince William and his subsequent initiation into the royal family, all steeped in Arthurian legend tradition, even where his schooling was. If you'll recall, in 2010, it was September, Prince William started work at a search and rescue helicopter Squadron number 22, 11, at the Royal Air Force training facility that was right there on this old ancient area where King Arthur's legendary. William, then second in line to the throne, and still is, and the eldest son of Prince Charles and his deceased first wife, Princess Diana, co-piloted the Sea King helicopter as part of a four-man crew based at RAF Valley and Anglesey on the northwest coast of Wales. Yes, RAF Valley, home to the headquarters of the 22nd Squadron search and rescue helicopters. When Prince William was invested as the next Prince of Wales, as I've already stated, will be the 22nd all-time, the 11. The RAF Valley was built there for a precise reason. Underneath of this runway that the RAF Valley squadrons take off and land on daily, where these warbirds take flight, is an ancient Druid dried lake. It's also known as the Lake of Lyn Cerrig Bach. It was located at the mouth of the Ala River. It's now immediately under the runway at RAF Valley Air Force Base. More than 150 artifacts supposedly have been dug up there and have been thrown into the holy water as a tribute to the gods. The recovered artifacts were not trinkets, but supposedly the most important find of its kind in the British Isles. We're told that each was a valuable item. Archaeologists believe that these sacrificial offerings were offered to the gods over a period of 250 years back, until the end of the 1st century AD. That's the exact time frame. The exact time frame when Anglesey was considered to be the site of the Druid schools, which is where, of course, Merlin taught Arthur the arts. The Druids were well known to have made human sacrifices there. The famous Lindau man. Perhaps you heard of them. That human sacrifice, believed to have been a Celtic prince from Ireland who crossed the sea to offer himself as a sacrifice when the Romans were threatening Anglesey. He arrives too late, the legend goes, but was smuggled to Lindau, an important point on the gold route, which was also under threat from the Romans, where he was sacrificed to protect the Druids' interests. Humans used as a sacrifice for their gods was a theme well explored in Hollywood. One of the most famous is the movie The Wicker Man. The human sacrifice in that movie, police officer. The Roman author Diodorus stated that those that were sacrificed were normally people that had actually broken the law. As the Druids were the people in charge of these sacrifices, their role as judges might have played a role in the selection process. Less, and perhaps too little, attention has been paid to that part of Anglesey that is actually not part of the island, but is a separate island. Holy Island. The name itself is very telling. It suggests that the island, of course, was sacred. And, in fact, its sacredness seems to have been its main characteristic, as the name has survived through the ages. Still, many don't know why it was deemed to be holy. But I think I can tell you. You want to know why? Human blood was spilled there, over and over and over again, to ensure the success of the great work, the plan for Camelot, the one world government. The name has nothing to do with Christianity, holy, suggesting that its sacredness has everything to do with Celtic religion, bringing us back to, of course, the Druids. But Holy Island is not only a sacred island in this area. On a clear day you can see Bardsey Island in the distance, an island whose very name is linked with the bards, the Druids, the storytellers of the old legends, the media of the olden days. The bards were. They'd go from town to town telling the old stories, the thrilling, wonderful power of their king. The bards would pretty much be the propaganda boys. They did it in song and plays. Went from town to town. These guys were actually the media way back then, really. They provided the news through entertainment, weaving in their lies designed to scare and keep the people under control. Just as the media does today. Really, nothing's changed. There's nothing new under the sun. Bardsley Island is an island that is equally held to be sacred and even identified as the real Avalon. Legend states that Bardsey Island, also known as Yunisenlo, and is identified with the last resting place of Merlin, the magician himself, the mentor of King Arthur, the archetypical druid who raised and instructed King Arthur in the occult world of the druids. The legend states that he slept with in a magical glass castle surrounded by the 13 treasures of Britain and constantly attended to by 9 bardic companions. The Knights of the Templar began with 9 Templars, by the way. Yunisenlo is usually interpreted as the island of the currents, or Tide Race Island, in reference to the treacherous waters of Bardsey Sound that can make for a very perilous and sometimes impossible crossing. It may, though, also be a corrupted form of Yunus Fennelly. Benel's Island, a reference to the giant Benel Gar, who was an Irish warlord that conquered the kingdom of Powys. Like Holy Island, Yunisenlo's religious associations predate the Christian era. It goes back all the way to the time of the raiding Vikings that labeled it the Bard's Island. But watch out for a Merovingian sorcerer king trick here. Even though its sacred nature predates Christianity, its sacred nature is now commonly seen within a Christian context, some labeling it with the Iona of Wales. Like Iona and Holy Island, Bardsey Island is an island off the west coast of the mainland, and that's why it's associated with the setting sun and the departure of the soul of the other world. It's on the west side. West means death, because you see in the west the sun sets, and it's reborn again in the east in the morning the next day. So, like Iona, it became the most important burial place for the soul of the other world. Like Iona, being on the west side, the most most important burial place for royalty and holy men. Some 20,000 saints are said to be buried in its grounds somewhere around. Although it remains to be seen whether this claim is supported by any archaeological evidence. But knowing the Illuminati, I'm sure it will be when it's time. Where precisely these thousands of remains would be buried is a pretty good question, with no apparent answer. Make no mistake, though, its sacred nature is not in doubt. The Church even proclaimed that 3 pilgrimages to Eunice and Lowell were equal to 1 to Rome, thus attaining the nickname of being the Rome of Britain. You know, researchers often wonder if Bardsey Island was the actual site where the Druids and Celtic royalty, whatever that may mean, were buried, or whether it was here that Druids perhaps also retired to in preparation for their eventual deaths. Legend has it that anybody buried on Bardsey was guaranteed eternal salvation. What's more, the place was always considered something of a health spot. Giraldus Cambrensis, in his itinerary through Wales of 1188, wrote, "Beyond Lilian, there's a small island inhabited by very religious monks called Calibes, or Colidai. This island, either from its health climate or rather from some miracle and the merits of the saints, had this wonderful peculiarity about it that the oldest people always die first because diseases were very uncommon there." It's a Spaceman. More next on AVFS. Please direct your emails. I communicate by email only to space640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. It's AVFS. I'm a Spaceman. It's AM 640. Just talking about Bardsey Island. You've heard of the island of Avalon. Well, Bardsey Island really gave it that mystique. This island, well, as I was saying before the break, the healthy climate that it has, but very few people die young on this island, Bardsey. It's also the island where the ancient Druids and Celtic royalty were buried. The high-placed Druids and the royals, members of the royal family, buried on Bardsey. It's descriptions like that contributed to the island's identification with Avalon and the site where King Arthur was taken to be healed after the Battle of Camlan. Barber and Pickett, 2 authors, even believed that Merlin's glass house was a sort of early greenhouse attached to St. Cadfan's monastery where apples could grow. In 1998, some windfall apples from under a gnarled old tree were actually collected by someone who noticed that the fruit and the tree were actually totally free of disease, which is very, very unusual. He nor anyone else supposedly was able to recognize the type of apple, so a specimen was sent to the National Fruit Collection at Brogdale in Kent, in the UK, where Dr. Joan Morgan declared that the fruit and the tree were unique. The media actually jumped all over this discovery and called it the rarest tree in the world. Some newspapers who carried the story underlined the connection between Bardsey Island and Avalon even, and the island of apples, to write their headlines. Despite headline news, few facts are actually known about the apple. How the apple tree came to be there is unknown, though the variety is believed to date back to the 13th century, grown by monks. Whether the tree is self-fertile or requires pollen from other apple trees is also unknown. The tree's age is also unknown, and the last person to be born on the island when in his 70s, said the three had always been there. The house next to the tree had been built, said, built by Lord Newborough, by the way, in the 1870s, drew a rather interesting comparison to the original edition of the Wicker Man movie, which focuses heavily on the apple theme and Lord Summerisle, of course, if you've seen that flick. Equally interesting was the hillside above the house. It's a cave, known as the Hermit's Cave, where Merlin, the magician, mentor of King Arthur, is reputedly buried. Remember, not long ago, it was in 2010, a branch of an apple tree from a tree in Lincolnshire that Sir Isaac Newton sat under and discovered gravity under was sent into space with the space shuttle Atlantis. And we were told back then it was part of the Royal Society's 350th anniversary, celebrating the institution's 350th anniversary. And when Sellers last flew in space in 2006, he carried up a gold medal that the Society later presented to the British physicist Stephen Hawking. He also took a flag of the 2012 London Olympics that was going to happen in a couple of years back then in 2010. The bit of wood from Newton's apple tree, Druids believe trees house spirits, by the way, was a 4-inch section of wood that is normally held in the Royal Society's archives, but it was launched into space up to the International Space Station. Obviously, relics were sent up to complete an elaborate ritual, I would say, designed to do what all of their rituals are designed to do. And that is to, well, be part of the ritual to set up a one-world government in the form of a new world order with the highest-ranking bloodline member of the Merovingian Sorcerer King's bloodline at the head. What's the code that's in all of the space shuttles' names? A Columbian enterprise to endeavor for the discovery of Atlantis, and all challengers shall be destroyed. They want to bring back the golden age of Atlantis, where their ancestor Poseidon ruled the world, as they knew the world then. Nimrod was the ruler of the world also, as the world they knew at that time. Things not mentioned in our education system. The Druids are notorious for having left little information behind, and the Romans seem to have gone to great pains to make sure their fierce opponents, the Druids, were pretty much removed from the pages of history. Or was it a conspiracy to keep this knowledge hidden from the whole world? Everything is literally prepared for him. This coming Antichrist is alive, I believe now, among us, and a malevolent spirit which seeks him out during a very specific moment in time in the future, the near future, during the future king's own quest for power, shall completely take him over, mind, body, and soul. And it will be done willingly. The Scriptures explicitly describes the spirit of the Antichrist as the red dragon rising up from the otherworldly abyss, and immediately, without reservation, seemingly foreknowing its intended target, possesses the prince who shall become the Antichrist. He is thereby referred to in some versions of the Bible as the willful king. Daniel 11, verse 36. During the time of the Earth's reconstruction, when Antichrist ascends to power at the age of 33 or older, he will literally be seen as everything to everyone. with his natural charm of both parents, he will exhibit all the strong traits from his father, from uniting global faiths, funding occult activities, as well as lending overwhelming support toward natural energy, solar power, conservation, environmentalism, climate change, worldwide. Something seen as most important in that future world that's coming after a great devastation. From this Celtic mother, he will seem to exhibit all our maternal reaching out to the lost, the hurting of the global society, which is quite uncanny since the Antichrist was foreseen to seemingly be a great humanitarian, if only to counterfeit the level of which Christ appeared to the people of his time at. The Antichrist is also to bring about a world peace. Maybe his greatest legacy, securing the most devastating weapons of war, nuclear weapons. That's the role North Korea and Iran play today. As yet, he will seem to be all things to all people. To the environmentalists, the Green King will be seen as restoring the planet ecologically to perfect equilibrium and balance of nature. To the secular society, he will seem to be putting individual human rights above all else. To the more radical religious person and those of the New Age movement, he will be seen to be the embodiment of the Aquarian Christ, the Masonic Christ, who has come at last. And while to even the most observant of God-worshipping Orthodox Jews, the Antichrist will seem to be their long-awaited Messianic king. Apparently much to the delight of those who already hate the Jewish people, those of whom the Scriptures describe in Daniel 11:30 as them that forsake the Holy Covenant. It's the Spaceman on Talk Radio, AM 640. Back with more right after this. I'm the guy to call the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. You can email me at space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Yes, Diana, the mother of whom I believe is going to be the future king of the UK, Prince William, died, and the ancient archetype of the princess being carried off by a prince in shining armor is how her royal journey all started. And they lived happily ever after for a while. Well, not only did she not live happily ever after, but neither her old Prince Charles nor her new young Prince Dodi Fayed, her boyfriend, could protect her from the dragons. And strangely enough, she got more publicity than anyone in that walk of life. She's canonized by the media. As a matter of fact, the Illuminati controlled mass media as a saint. Diana received much more press than anyone, including Agnes Gonsha Boyaksui, who died the very same week as Princess Diana. You don't know her by her real name. You only know her as Mother Teresa, another famous woman who also died that week. But very little came out about that. Diana began as a big media plus for the royal family, known as the Firm. Although obviously the Queen and the royals have lived to regret this royal wedding of the century, as they called it. But there is a very sinister occult side to the events surrounding Diana's wedding and death, which is not well known. Diana, Charles, and their children figure very prominently in the plans of the New World Order and its moguls. What most people who have been so fascinated with the royals fail to realize is that they have been involved in the occult for a very long time. Centuries. As far back as the days of William the Conqueror, there's evidence of involuntary or voluntary involvement in witchcraft by the monarchy. For centuries, King of England was also regarded by the virtue of his office as the high priest of witchcraft of the Britons. The origins of such venerable institutions of the monarchy as the Order of the Garter are like totally surrounded in sacred trappings of witchcraft. Many kings of England swore allegiance to both Catholicism before Henry VIII and to the gods of witchcraft together. Today, Prince Charles is reported to be involved in the occult. He talks to plants. He uses seances to communicate with his dead uncle, Lord Mountbatten. Philip, the husband of the head of the Church of England, Queen Elizabeth II, and defender of the faith, believes in reincarnation. Witches in the 1970s believed there was something magical about the royal family. Countless spells were done and many covens to bring to pass an occult prophecy. When a woman would sit on the English throne bearing the name of the great mother goddess, the child she would bear would be an incarnation of the celebrated King Arthur. The world of witchcraft conjured tirelessly to bring this to pass. In the world of the Druids, this would be analogous to the second coming. And along came Lady Diana Spencer, of course. Diana, the name of the goddess, even in the Bible. See Acts 19:35. Her bloodline is even more ancient and royal than Charles is. And you need to realize that in the high levels of witchcraft and Illuminism, royal bloodlines, both well-known and not so well-known, are extremely important. The people are literally bred for their parts, their roles they play. There are various occult myths about the origins of noble blood, too, and the divine right of kings. One made popular in books in the last decade involves the concept that, when I talked about earlier, Jesus had children by Mary Magdalene, and that royal blood, especially the Merovingian line, is actually the lineage of Jesus. Supposedly there are nobility walking about the earth today who are descended from Jesus. But remember that in recent years, the space aliens of Roswell and that kind of thing, of bluish-green blood, of course they're supposed to be interbreeding with humans. That's why. Some have speculated that the way the idea of kings and royalty actually began was the gods from outer space came to Earth, came down, had sexual relations with the human women. Their offspring, which were demigods, half god, half mortal, like Hercules, became the first celebrated kings, the mighty men, the men of renown spoken of in Genesis 6. Of course, these superheroes may have done some bluish-green blood in their veins. A metaphor, obviously. In any event, Diana's charm, originally a term in magic, charm, was evident from the moment she stepped onto the stage, the world stage, and into the limelight. When the occult world saw her and her name, Diana, the goddess of heaven, they hoped that she would be the fulfillment of the prophecy. Then, when the royal wedding took place on Illumanati, the whole world of witchcraft and wizardry knew something very big was taking place. Illumanati, you see, is from late July to early August. It's the traditional time for witch weddings. Now, whether or not Diana even knew of this, we will never know. I'm not saying Diana was a witch. Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't. But only being manipulated by her family and or the royal family to their own ends was what happened to her. She seemed a sweet and innocent young lady. Many people with high-level occult backgrounds raised their kids with absolutely no knowledge at all of their dark heritage, and then covertly arranged marriages with other families possessing carefully guarded bloodlines as well. Few bloodlines are guarded as those of the firm, though. The inner sanctum, the highest, purest bloodline. Of course, the controversial doctrine of British Israelitism teaches that British monarchy is actually the House of David. They believe that when Jesus returns, the throne of David will be in Westminster Abbey over the stone of destiny, supposedly the stone that Jacob slept on in Genesis 28. So Diana's firstborn son, William, from a witch's occult perspective, would be very special indeed. He would not just be the heir to the throne of England, he would be also representing the confluence of two powerful occult bloodlines. What's more is that he would be sitting on the throne of David. Remember me telling you he first visited Wales, the Red Dragon land, on March 1st, 1991. St. David's Day. Needless to say, Diana's separation and later divorce from Charles was a big problem for both the royals and the New World Order Druids. Diana was much more sympathetic and popular than her husband Charles ever was. Aside from the parliamentary crisis involved, an heir to the throne of England technically could not divorce, then remarry. It also meant that the precious Prince William would be primarily in custody of Diana and not under the watchful eye of the royals in Buckingham Palace. Also, Diana's late involvement with the Muslim millionaire Dodi Fayed was probably more than anyone in the royal family could actually stand. Prince Philip, Diana's ex-father-in-law, was reported to have been especially furious at the prospect of Princes William and his brother Harry having an Arab stepfather. From all I've learned, I believe sincerely that Diana's accident was not an accident at all. It was an assassination. Not only was it was not just an assassination either, but a ritual sacrifice. It was certainly convenient for Charles and Queen Elizabeth that Diana would be out of the way. Once again, the palace would have full control of the princes. Even the place where Diana's accident took place was especially chosen. The accident took place at the tunnel called Pont d'Alma. This is a huge coincidence under the circumstances, or it was carefully and painstakingly planned. The place in which the Pont d'Alma is built, an ancient pagan sacrificial site, sacred to the moon goddess Diana, the Queen of Heaven. In the pagan Roman religion before Christ, Diana was the triple goddess, the Queen of Heaven. The word Alma actually means moon goddess in many Mid-Eastern languages. Pont d'Alma literally means bridge to heaven, where she died. It's Spaceman. It's ABFS on Talk Radio AM 640. I'm the guy to call the Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640. The final segment in tonight's show. So let me tell you a little bit more about the death place of, I believe, the future king's mother, Princess Diana. Pont d'Alma literally means, as I said before the break, bridge to heaven. And it also has been steeped in very rich history of the Merovingian king dynasty in France, because that's where the first Merovingian kings ruled. During the Merovingian period, which is from 500 to 751 AD, if two kings had a dispute over property, it had to be settled by combat. Where? At precisely where she was killed, Pont d'Alma. Legend has it that anyone killed there goes to heaven immediately to sit at God's right hand, being able to look down and see all that happens on the earth, even with their enemies. So the person killed was actually the victor, because they became God's eyes on earth and could manipulate humanity from heaven. Isn't it interesting that this is where Diana just happened to be killed? Pont d'Alma, that very piece of real estate, where that bridge now stands today. It's especially interesting in the light of the fact that Meroveus, the founder of the Merovingian dynasty itself, was a devotee of goddess Diana. But why was Diana killed? Well, aside from the obvious fact that her death clears away a lot of the problems the royals had been experiencing, there's a deeper, more sinister reason, I believe. See, I believe Diana's bloodline was even more pure royal than Charles. She can trace her ancestry back to the Scottish House of Stuart, at least to King Charles II. The current Prince Charles' ancestry is a mixture of Russian, German, and French, along with the English. The House of Windsor was originally called Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, but the name was changed in 1917 because it sounded too German, especially after the First World War and World War II against the Germans, with Britain being the aggressor, leader of the Allied forces against the Nazis on the horizon. In the doctrine of paganism and witchcraft, there's a belief known as the right of divine kings. This belief is that the king is also the witch high priest over all the land over which he reigns. In dire times, then, he then must be killed as a sacrifice so that the land may be healed. Some scholars believe that several ancient kings of England were killed that way. Now, the idea being this: the king and the land are one from the standpoint of witchcraft. The king is the living incarnation of the land over the land which he reigns. So if the land is in bad shape, royal blood must be shed to heal the land. Originally, this would have been seen as things like crop failures, droughts, problems with disease among cattle. Of course, today's things are a little less of a concern than the fact that monarchy itself is being put at risk by Diana's actions when she was alive. But remember the infamous mad cow disease that inflicted thousands of livestock in the British Isles? Farmers in Britain ended up having to kill millions of pounds worth of cattle because of the disease. Now that really would be something worthy of a divine king's sacrifice. Traditionally, this sacrifice had to take place around the witch festival of what's called Harvest Home, which is around September 21st. There's a significant precedent for some dying in the place of the king. Someone else, preferably with normal blood, but some witches believe that Thomas Becket's death was actually a vicarious sacrifice for Henry II, for example, to illustrate how well known this concept really is of a substitute sacrifice. And you only need to really refer to that popular movie which I talked about earlier in the show tonight, which achieved cult status, The Wicker Man. It shows it all. The Wicker Man, made in the early 70s in Britain, had a lot of high-powered talent behind it, too. It's not just your garden variety horror flick. This film was about a fictitious island, probably based on the Isle of Man, off the coast of Scotland. It's supposedly called Summerisle, and is reigned over by a Lord Summerisle. And a Scottish policeman is sent over to the island to investigate a disappearance of a young girl. He's a strict Presbyterian. He's part of the royal constabulary. See, he works for the royals. He had the crown on. So he was the one that was used as the sacrifice. Very, very evil ritual, who would take a man, dupe him under false pretense, bringing him over to the island to supposedly look for a little girl in this case that wasn't missing at all. She was never really missing, and that constable was lured to the island to be a human sacrifice within the Wicker Man because all the apple trees on the island had blight. Now recall the apple tree that went to visit the ISS I told you about earlier in the show. See how that all fits? All ritualistic. The end of the film makes it extremely clear that Lord Summerisle, the high priest king of the island, should have been the sacrifice, but they lured the constable there. Instead, he became it. He qualified because, well, he represented the crown of England. Remember, the British police arrest you in the name of the crown. As the constable is left dying in the flames of that Wicker Man movie, he cries out to Lord Summerisle's words to the effect that he had better watch out if the apple trees did not improve. Summerisle would be the Wicker Man next year. To his credit, that flick doesn't caricature the stern Christian constable too much, and he's seen going to his death as a noble martyr. But the point I want to emphasize here is that this film played on the pagan concept that a vicarious substitute could be chosen to replace the actual high priest king. What's more, to create the rebirth of King Arthur and young Prince William Arthur, Philip Louis Windsor, both summer solstice 1982 birth date, would require some extremely powerful magical energy, indeed, which could only be raised by the ritual murder of a divine king or a royal divine substitute. An understanding of all of this ritual meticulously follows and carries out to the letter by the Druids. It's obvious that Diana was the sacrifice that was intended as a substitute for the royal ritual murderer. That's what I believe. And it's very telling for the vicarious sacrifice to be effective. It would have had to have been done near, but before, the Harvest Home Feast, September 21st. August 31st, the day of Diana's accident, the same exact day as the Harvest Home Feast Day falls on. The dark hand of Freemasonry show its hand here. There are oddly coincidental Masonic elements to her death. As well, not the least of which is the fact that right above the Alma Tunnel is a replica of the torch from the Statue of Liberty, who was actually the ancient Sumerian goddess Ishtar, a Masonic goddess sculpted by a French Freemason. That torch actually symbolizes the light of Lucifer. Another Masonic feature is the fact that the Mercedes carrying Diana smashed into not just any pillar within the Alma Tunnel, but the 13th. Very significant in both Masonry and witchcraft. As I say, the Illuminati always mark their sacrifices with the number of the cult. buried somewhere in the story. And a final grisly Masonic coincidence, which has been pointed out by more than one person. It's done a lot of research on this, of course, supposedly trying to save Diana's life. Later, the tortured slow ride to the hospital, it took all 40 minutes to travel 3.8 miles to work on and massage her heart. Her chest was cut open from collarbone to navel. This is the penalty of second degree in Masonry. You have your chest ripped open and your heart taken out. Remember that both Prince Charles and Queen Elizabeth II are, by virtue of their leadership in the Order of the Garter, the highest-ranking Masons in the world, even though neither is actually known to be one. This has been A View from Space on Talk Radio AM 640. Coast to Coast is next, and I'm Space, and I'm out.